We're going to start. I want to welcome everyone. I know the world's changing a little bit, so it's gorgeous out, and folks are trying to enjoy their outdoor time. Also want to note this will all be available on our website as well. So we'll make sure that the presentation goes up quickly and the recording will be posted later. We have a website that's just for the community process. So we'll note that, and you can let your friends know. Lauren, you can post my cell number, yours, in the chat, just in case friends are having trouble logging in. They can refer them to whoever or somebody on your team,
Yep.
just so we get everybody in tonight. So I want to welcome you. I'm not going to introduce all of our team, but my name's Anthony Galluccio, and I'm the permitting attorney for this project. And I'm extremely proud of what has been accomplished over the last 9 months, really. But since January, when we met, there were incredible comments and insight from the neighborhood. And as folks know, the neighborhood really has three prongs to it. The Whittemore Ave neighborhood, the Harvey Street neighborhood, and the Ringe Ave community. And they're all very eclectic, active, interested neighborhoods. And we were able to round up input from all those folks in January. And then we had dozens and dozens of other meetings with specific groups. Our Life Study Group has been incredible, just driving us to respond to issues that really relate to day-to-day life. So things that maybe we would not have thought of because we don't live next door, or based on past experience. And it's been incredibly helpful. So tonight is really all about response. I don't think there's one change in the plan that didn't come from the community in some aspect. I just want to note, and we're going to have some fun with some history, not a lot, but it's just it's a fascinating site and a fascinating and diverse neighborhood, and we've all really enjoyed this. I do want to note, I'm not going to get into a lot of zoning because we did that in January. It's exciting for me because I actually served on the city council when members of the Our Life Study Group and others across the neighborhood, the stabilization and other groups advanced the zoning, which really limits the heights. It pushes the development into the northern area and allows us to protect this open space. It was a very balanced zoning, and David Surratt and IQHQ early on decided that we wanted to conform to the zoning and not seek additional development rights. The neighborhood also advanced the asbestos protection ordinance, which I also was a supporter of. And that was the sort of driver to make sure that anything that happens across this site is incredibly protective of displacement of asbestos and removal and tenting. And so those have been guides for us, along with making sure that we're mindful of floodplain and flood and water storage. And those things have all driven what I think appears to be a really strong improvement. I'm not going to introduce members of the team because you will see how vested and deep this team runs. They will introduce themselves as they go through, because we want to give folks plenty of time at the end. Chat is live. We will respond in real time to chat that we can. More complicated chat questions will get deferred to the Q&A, and we will assign those questions to the respective sections. So when we go through section by section, we will answer those. Do ask that we wait until the end of the presentation. It's about 40 minutes. And then we'll get into Q&A right away. And we've practiced and we've rehearsed, and we hope we stick about to that time. Chris, you want to go to the agenda slide?
Sounds good.
This is the agenda. So we'll go. These are the topics for tonight. We'll get through them. We'll get through them quickly. As a just as a note, we do have to give all the credit to the neighborhood. You know, just meeting after meeting and email, sending lists of issues. And I have to thank Joel and Lisa and Ronnie and Mike and David and all the Our Life Study Group folks. I want to thank Friends of Jerry's Pond for inspiring our Jerry's Pond plan. But we've been out there talking to folks one-on-one, getting opinions through interns and interacting with folks all over the neighborhood. And this is a result of all the input. I do want to thank Mayor Siddiqui and City Councilor Nolan, who are both on and both were adamant about getting more enjoyment and seating spaces around Jerry's Pond. So I want to note their pressure and their insight, and it made a big difference. And I also want to thank Representative Owens and Representative Rogers for being on the call. At this time, I'll turn it over to Chris Haynes, our architect.
Great, thanks, Anthony. Appreciate it. Good evening, everyone. As Anthony said, hope you're enjoying the weather, although a little warmer today. See a lot of familiar faces on the call today, which is great, and excited to share the updates tonight. So I'll start with connectivity and public access. And, you know, it's important to kind of start where we are today, right? Everyone recognizes the site here, but I think it's important to start here and recognize the challenges that exist today within the site plan. You know, really the campus, the buildings, the gates, et cetera, act as a fortress or a barrier around the edges of the site. So now, if you look at this diagram, you know, as we move along Whittemore and the east end by Harvey Street, all the way down by Russell Field, the campus is really a barrier, and it's not porous, and it's not welcoming or you know, creating of connections through the site or into the site. And so, you know, that has been a goal from the very beginning, and something we heard through lots of meetings and lots of input is that connectivity is key across these neighborhoods, and particularly in the north side, Whittemore, and the east side of Harvey Street, where it is such a barrier today. So within the new site plan that we have on the screen here, so we've created a lot of great new connections, and really what the site wants to do is welcome the neighborhood to the site. And you know, the improvements that you see on this plan are from you and from the folks that Anthony mentioned at the beginning. So the yellow arrows indicate those important connections. I'll kind of walk through them. We have the Whittemore Gateway, we call it, which connects to the Central Plaza and through the site down to the head house. We'll talk a little bit more about that. We've got some great imagery to share around a lot of activity and activation of the Central Plaza. On the east side, a Whittemore linear path connection that we heard from you, Lisa, and from others representing the northern Whittemore neighborhood, that was a really important connection that was needed. And so we're working on implementing that and integrating that into our design so that there is a nice clear path and connection from Whittemore to the linear path. That also connects into the east-west axis of the project we call the Promenade. At Harvey Street, you know, currently there's a fence and no access. There will be bike and pedestrian connection. There is no vehicular access. There will be emergency, but no vehicular access. So no cars cutting through the site or coming on Harvey, only bike and pedestrian at that connection point. That's where we have a blue bike station that we've proposed that, you know, again, we heard through the community groups that was an important amenity to include on the site adjacent to the linear path. And then also the connection north to south. There's a small path currently, and we are increasing the width of that so that we have additional access from the head house up through the site. The other really important piece to note here, you'll see on the bottom right, is the buildings that you see here were all planned and developed over previously developed areas. That was a major driver for the project, so we could maintain as much of the open space as we could, in addition to create additional. The buildings are also located upland or north on the site to minimize the impact on the floodplain and the trees. So, kind of in summary, breaking down the barrier at Whittemore and locating the buildings over previously developed area, two big concepts that we heard from the community and that we've put into this site plan. So those gateways really turn into this network of paths, and I think we worked on these paths, kind of week in and week out together with the Alewife Study Group and others to really land on what you see today. So it has been quite an iterative process, and that's been great. The purple lines represent bike connectivity that we would like to provide through the site so that it takes some of that congestion off of the linear path, so that through commuters who are at more of a commuting speed can take the path, as I'm kind of mousing over that. Mike brought that up in the Alewife Study Group meeting. It was a great point, and we have integrated that here. And a couple of other things I'll note, at this corner here, down by Russell Field, you'll see in later slides, we're going to increase some visibility there. Joel brought that up through our meetings. That's, we find is really important to make sure that's a safe turn as you head toward the head house. And the red paths are pedestrian paths. So we have lots of connectivity north-south and east-west through the site. And again, creating that kind of web of connectivity that we heard was so important to link these neighborhoods across the site. The next slide zooms out. So now we've talked about the northern part. This includes Jerry's Pond to the south. And you see the linear path continuing in the sort of purple tone, as well as the multimodal path along Route 16, which you'll hear later. We're increasing that width from 6 feet to 12 feet to make that a true multimodal path. Also a pedestrian connection that goes north to south from Ringe Avenue to the head house. Again, separating that pedestrian flow from the linear path and bike flow so that you can have less congestion along the path, because that was something, again, we heard from multiple folks on the first call back in January as well as through the spring. And then you'll see an image on the right. Again, this is just an example, but at Harvey Street, we'll have removable bollards or a similar type so that vehicles don't pass through, but it is easily permeable by bike and by peds or pedestrians. And so the public access part is a really exciting part of the plan. We have across the site, over 420 different seating seats in seating areas, from Jerry's Pond area to the what we call the natural habitat through the middle of the site and up into the central plaza that's here kind of nested in the center of the development. And those are destinations across the site for folks to grab a coffee or a sandwich from the retail and sit and have lunch with a friend, or have experience the food trucks that we'll have in the central plaza. And even David Bass mentioned, hey, what about some temporary performance space? We could work that into the central plaza and be able to offer some really dynamic activities for the community to have engagement within this site and within this campus. There'll be more detail about a lot of the Jerry's Pond areas, but I do want to show some sort of specific imagery around the center plaza and zoom in a little bit on that area, because it does offer a variety of seating. There's a fountain in the center that in the summer and non-winter months will be a great attraction. We're showing food trucks here, an ice cream truck, again, really a vibrant activity within the Central Plaza, with seating for over 250 throughout various seating arrangements, movable and fixed. And then I'll go through a few views. So I talked about that Whittemore Gateway. If you're on Whittemore Ave and you're looking south, currently there's just a wall of buildings with no access. So here is the opening in that gateway through the site. The Central Plaza is in the distance here. So again, a welcoming open arms to the community into the site at that location. As we go into the Central Plaza now, you're seeing the food truck activity within this Center Plaza, variety of seating, both fixed and movable, to create a really nice dynamic atmosphere. We also heard, more trees within the Center Plaza. So we added probably another, half a dozen or more trees within the Center Plaza, more shade, less heat island impact. So a lot of great improvements there. And then turning around, looking back toward the retail area, you can see nice visibility into the retail and amenity space. We're showing some, lights strung between the buildings, so a nice festive atmosphere within the Center Plaza area. And then now we're down, working our way along the service, what we call the service road, where we have the bike shared path that you can see in both directions, as well as visibility to that retail spot. So if you're walking from Harvey Street on the way to the T, you could stop by, grab a coffee or a breakfast, and head down to the T in the morning. So a lot of great opportunities and exciting destinations, and it's great to be able to share a lot of these images that we have developed over the spring through great collaboration with this group. And then I'll end my section here just talking about the MBTA head house. We know it's in tough shape. The plaza is in tough shape. The paving, IQHQ is in talks and in coordination with the MBTA to make a series of improvements to the head house. I mentioned we're widening the path to the north. They're looking at a mural program for the north facade. So something, there's quite a mural history in Cambridge, and some really great murals that exist in Central Square and other areas. So that could be a really exciting opportunity for engaging in local artists, and then painting the rest of the head house and freshen it up, replace the entry doors, replace the paving, and add new plantings. You can see here some planters with trees in it to add some shade, some seating, just make it more livable plaza, a place to wait for a friend if you're heading out on the red line. And then additional exterior lighting just for a more secure area in the evenings. So that's exciting. It's a big destination. It's a big part of the transit-oriented development, and the improvements I think will be great for the community and for the project. All right. Next, I'll hand it over to Chrissy Gabriel from IQHQ to introduce traffic.
Great. Thank you, Chris. Chrissy Gabriel, Director of Development with IQHQ. Wanted to quickly touch base on parking for the site. So we are confident with the amount of parking that we are proposed for this project. Throughout the community process, we've learned that the people in the neighborhood really want to make sure we have enough parking to support the site. Having enough supply, but also not too much in order to limit the traffic impact on the neighborhood as well. And so our proposal does include a slight reduction in parking across the site from the existing conditions that we see today. And we really believe that we have found the correct balance here. The use of the lots north of Whittemore will also help contribute to that balance. And we also wanted to make sure to note that we will be allowing the community to use these lots as a resource in certain conditions like snow emergencies and whatnot when IQHQ is not using the lots. I'll hand it over to Sean Manning to provide some updates on some of the other neighborhood feedback we got regarding parking and traffic.
Thank you very much. And again, good evening, everyone. We're really happy that you're able to attend today. I've got some traffic updates that I certainly want to share with you many of which are in direct response to community input that we've received over the past few months, echoing what Anthony said at the beginning of the presentation. I want to start with the garage and the positioning of the garage relative to some really key access and circulation advantages that we're trying to take in connection with the site. Most notably, the strong connections that the site has to and from Route 2 using the Alewife Station access road. And I've got some follow-on graphics that I'm going to show to you that just demonstrate that that's where a lot of the traffic wants to come from and go to. And by virtue of having that connection, we can move that traffic to Route 2 without ever going on local streets or on the Alewife Brook Parkway. And that certainly is a differentiator of this site to anything else that's in Alewife. For those that do want to go on the Alewife Brook Parkway, we're designing this such that we're really minimizing access and circulation through the neighborhood, that we're making use of our westerly driveway connection to Whittemore, that in the afternoon that's supported by a police detail, which, oh, by the way, we see as doubling as a way to better enforce and have folks respect that turn restriction on Whittemore in the afternoon, where you're really not allowed to go eastbound through the neighborhood between 3 and 7 Monday to Saturday. Additionally, the site is going to be fitted with parking in a number of strategic locations. And again, the whole point of that is to eliminate the opportunity to use the access road as an interesting cut through and circumvent some other traffic issues that are happening in Alewife, particularly where Route 2 terminates at the Alewife Brook Parkway. And then finally, just from a traffic management standpoint, IQHQ is very committed to implementing a comprehensive TDM, a transportation demand management program. That's certainly going to include great transit subsidies for T-passes. Chris Haynes just walked you through all of the ped and bike connectivity that we want to leverage. We've got Minuteman, we've got Linear Park. We want to have great connections that bring the neighborhoods and this site to that. And we want folks that are going to work here to make use of bikes for sure. So we can go to the next slide, please. So these are simply heat diagrams that are showing where traffic is coming from and going to new traffic. This is entering morning traffic. And again, I want to speak to the notion of Route 2, which journey to work data for the Alewife district suggests up to 50% of our traffic is going to come in that direction. Certainly, we have traffic that we need to manage on Alewife Brook Parkway. We know that, and we are identifying, a modest amount of traffic, downtown traffic that may come up Massachusetts Avenue, that could use Magoon Street to get in. Although we are talking with ASG about how we can better encourage those folks maybe to go to Mass Ave and take a left on Alewife Brook Parkway. If we can click again to the next slide. This is exiting traffic. It's essentially showing the same thing, but again, our goal to really leverage the value of direct connection to Route 2 and minimizing traffic on other streets. So that's all I have for now. Thank you very much. I'm assuming you'll have questions and comments, and we're happy to engage you in that. And I'm turning the presentation over to Eric Ruoff, who is going to walk through some project sustainability updates for you. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Yeah, and hi, folks. My name is Eric Ruoff. I'm with the Green Engineer, and we're the Sustainable Design Consultants for the project. And this team really identified sustainability as a foundational goal for the project right from the get-go. And we certainly heard similar priorities from the community. So we're excited to have this opportunity to provide an update on some of the initiatives underway, and hope you'll be pleased to see what we're presenting here, because there's a lot of exciting stuff to highlight. So let's dive in. We've got some a slide of just kind of general elements to touch on. This site includes a significant amount of open space, as Chris already mentioned, and we'll get into more detail as we go on here. And much of this is going to be sensitively restored to more natural conditions. So that's great. And, there was a mention of more trees. We got more trees along Whittemore Ave as well. And the site lighting along any sort of perimeter spaces will be sensitively and respectfully designed for light pollution impacts. We're also a primary focus on rainwater and management of storm events. And that's going to include the harvesting of rainwater that'll be reused for site irrigation. We'll touch upon some other ways of reducing peak runoff later on. The design itself will be elevated, the ground floor and the utilities to be above the 2070 projected floodplain height. And that's going to protect building infrastructure and keep it operational during future flood events. Also, the project's evaluating what goes into the building itself and looking to reduce embodied carbon within the materials that are selected. Also then looking for opportunities to capture and reuse gray water in the building itself. The project in general is committed to pursue formal LEED certification at the gold level and is also pursuing Fitwel certification, which is a health and wellness standard as well. So I want to dive into a few of the particular elements of that we want to highlight today. First, the project team committed to green roofs early in the design, even before the newly approved green roof ordinance took effect. And right now, the approach is to satisfy this using multiple green roof solutions. First, there will be some traditional green roofs throughout the lower roof areas of all the new buildings. Then what we're also going to see is biosolar. And this is what biosolar is a combination of green roofs and PV panels together. And this is a new to the US marketplace approach that really does double duty. It provides all the benefits of the green roof while producing renewable energy on site. And really the combination of those two has an added knock-on effect of increasing the performance of those PV panels due to lower ambient air conditions. And it really shows a demonstration of this project team to be a market leader. So outside of just these buildings, the garage itself will include a large green roof canopy area. This is a large uninterrupted green roof that will provide along with all the other green roof areas, significant areas of natural habitat, especially for pollinators. It will help reduce peak stormwater runoff. It will help reduce the urban heat island effect and increase the efficiency of the mechanical equipment as well by reducing that ambient air for those pieces of equipment as well. So the garage is also going to include some other benefits as well. There'll be EV charging stations in there, and there's going to be a bike repair station and looking at a bike donation site as well, since it's connection to that bike pathway. So we also have some traditional solar on the site. And this is looked at on the southeast Whittimer lot. And this will be through some parking solar canopies. Also in this space will be some additional EV charging stations outside of the structured garage. So we've got a lot going on from a sustainability perspective that's really exciting. And I appreciate the opportunity to highlight some of those elements right now. And we'll pass it off to Howard from VHB, who's going to go into more detail about some of the site design and flood management in particular.
Thank you, Eric, and good evening, everyone. My name's Howard Mosier. I'm with VHB. Happy to be here again. And you've heard a lot about the site planning aspects and many of the sustainable measures. I'm going to talk a little bit about stormwater and flood management. Thank you. Next slide. So one of the questions that's been presented a number of times is how is this project going to benefit the neighborhood in terms of stormwater and floodplain impacts? The quick takeaway is this project will result in improved stormwater runoff, reduced stormwater runoff, improved stormwater quality, which is important to the health of the nearby water bodies, and improved flood storages, all benefiting the community. There's a number of high-level measures that we're seeking to implement. You've seen previously and on these two comparative slides, we're spending a lot of time trying to devote more space to be permeable and open. That has a number of benefits. It reduces the runoff rates and volumes, it reduces the nutrient load. And, as composed in the development area, we're about 50% open space. The green roofs are certainly a big part of that. The open space doesn't even include the green roofs, but the green roofs, as Eric mentioned, they reduce the runoff volumes and rates. They also reduce the nutrient loads to the nearby water bodies. And the voluntary inclusion of that large area at the garage is certainly welcomed in terms of stormwater management. In addition to those systems, which are more low impact development, we will be using detention systems that will be below grade, that will further take kind of the peak off the stormwater volumes in those storms. It'll hold back the rainwater, and that allows more water from the nearby neighborhoods to take advantage of the below grade pipe capacity and nearby water networks, stormwater networks. And then on the stormwater quality side, we're going to further provide some proprietary treatment devices, which would further reduce the nutrients of concern, which are primarily phosphorus in this neighborhood, which will contribute to algal growth in the nearby water bodies. And just pausing on the slide on the right, we've spent a lot of time focusing on the lots south of the Whittemore, but our attention is now going to turn a little bit to the north of Whittemore, and we're continuing to explore what we can do for those existing surface lots to see if we can take kind of some stormwater management approaches there and help with surface stormwater runoff as well as flooding. Next slide, please. So this is just a quick slide, and we're going to quickly move through, but not all floodplains are equal, and the project's required to analyze it on a vertical foot by vertical foot basis because floodplains have unique response to different flooding events. And so when we go to the next slide, you'll see a couple color-coded maps that represent different elevation increments. And I'll tell the takeaway on the next slide, but it's a very detailed analysis. And on the left side, you see where the existing floodplain is. And the colors represent different elevations, but the existing floodplain holds just under 3 million gallons within the area south of Whittemore. And when we reshape this project, while yet still remaining resilient to the 2070 floor elevations, the 100-year conditions in the 2070, setting those floors up, we do reshape the floodplain. And you can kind of see from the top left going to the bottom right, that reshaping results in an increase of the flood storage of about 250,000 gallons, again, providing benefits to the community. So this site itself under flooding in the 100-year storm would be able to take more water and therefore less impact on the neighborhood. Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Chris Wagner, who will speak about habitat.
Thanks, Howard. Appreciate it. Hi, everyone. I'm Chris Wagner. I'm a senior environmental scientist at VHB, and I was in charge of conducting the wildlife habitat assessment on the site, which we did in response to feedback from the community who asked that a study be done to get a better sense of the extent and nature of the habitat that's present on the site. So we had two main goals with this assessment. Number one, we wanted to characterize the various areas on the site and how they're used by the wildlife that's there. In other words, we're not looking to catalog every single plant and animal that might occur on the site, but rather we just wanted to get a sense of the general areas and their usage. And then number two, members of the design team really were looking to use our results to inform their choices regarding site design so that they could make decisions that would really balance development with the protection of any sensitive areas on the site. So we conducted site visits in March and April of 2021. The visits in March were conducted by members of our staff of ecologists and environmental scientists. And then I also did a follow-up site visit in April with Matt Schweisberg, who was retained as a peer reviewer by interested members from the neighborhood. Next slide, please. So overall, we can characterize the site as having three main general areas. And if we can move to the next slide. The northern, central, and southern portions of the site. So the northern portion consists primarily of existing developed areas of the site. We've seen a few of them already tonight. Existing buildings, paved areas, lawn, landscaped areas. This picture is showing one of the current site buildings and associated parking areas. So this is sort of what we characterized as the northern portion of the site. Next slide. The central portion includes a lot of the areas around the MBTA head house and other undeveloped areas on the eastern side of the site. So this slide is showing one of the areas across from the head house. And these areas have a lot of early successional shrub vegetation, and in some parts, a little bit of early successional forest. They've been previously altered from prior site development. And some of the areas are surrounded by fencing. And a lot of the vegetation in these areas is made up of invasive non-native species as well. Next slide. And then the southern portion we characterize as Jerry's Pond and the surrounding areas. So this includes all the wetlands associated with the site, as well as adjacent upland woods on the west and northwest sides of the pond. This picture is showing some of the wooded areas on the west side. And as a lot of you may know, Jerry's Pond is a former clay quarry that's filled in to create an urban pond. So Jerry's Pond and the whole surrounding area is enclosed by fencing. And like some of the other areas on the site, there's a notable presence of invasives and non-native plants. And there's also a lot of signs of previous site usage, including remnants of the old parking lot in the southwest corner of the site, and the old bathhouse foundation, other utility structures that we found on the site. Next slide. This slide I included just to show you sort of what we are considering as the three general areas of the site. So the area shaded in light gray would be the existing developed areas. The area in lighter green represents mainly those shrub areas in the central portion. And then Jerry's Pond is shown in blue at the bottom, with the darker green color representing the wooded areas around the pond in the southern portion of the site. Next slide. So what did we find? Overall, the wildlife generally consists of typical urban residents, although there are some others as well. The most notable being, of course, the herons that use the west and northwest edges of the pond. And, you know, a lot of waterfowl use the pond. And we did observe a number of bird species using the pond and also the surrounding woods and fields as well. We also observed, you know, a number of small mammals, eastern cottontail, muskrats, chipmunks, squirrels, etc. But we also observed signs and are aware of reports from the community regarding larger mammals, such as deer, raccoon, fox, and even coyote. So as mentioned before, the site does have a significant invasive plant component. And overall, the habitat on the site is, you know, we would not characterize it as particularly high value. However, it does provide, you know, nesting, foraging, and cover opportunities for the species that use it and call it home. And it's worth noting that the fence around the pond is really what helped this community grow up in the first place. You know, that fence has really allowed that area to you know, mature and grow into the somewhat forested canopy that's there now. And so thinking about it from a larger perspective, there are opportunities that exist to augment this habitat in meaningful ways without destroying what's there currently, and to provide better connection and wildlife corridor between the site and the Alewife Brook areas to the north and northwest of the site. So as I mentioned at the beginning, the design team has used this information to inform their design. And as you'll hear from others, particularly JP, the team has really taken our findings to heart and into account, and have worked to develop their plan to strike that balance between smart development and protection of existing areas. So thank you. And with that, I will turn it over to Jen to discuss sampling results.
Thank you, Chris. Good evening. My name is Jen Sweet. I'm an environmental consultant with Haley and Aldridge, and serving as the licensed site professional for the project. I refuse to turn on the air conditioning in my house before Memorial Day, so if you see me sweating, I apologize. Not expecting this kind of heat today. So as many of you know, various contaminants are present, consistent with the long industrial use of the site in the development area. And a primary goal of the project from the start has been to ensure that any development activities occur in a way that is protective of workers and the surrounding public, And to that end, the design team has been diligently coordinating all of the design to ensure that happens. From day one, IQHQ has been committed to the City Asbestos Protection Ordinance, which the Alloy Study Group worked so hard to develop in the past to make sure that no one is exposed to airborne asbestos. And so work will include tenting and venting in areas where asbestos is present at the site. And construction and soil management plans, work plans will be developed, and those plans will be made available to the public before any work starts. In addition to that, air monitoring will be conducted during all soil disturbing work to confirm that the protective measures we're taking are effective. And at the end of the day, at the end of the project, the site will be cleaner than it is today. Next slide. So in January, we heard requests from the community for testing at Jerry's Pond. So we tested, and results indicate no significant risk to people or wildlife. Haley and Aldridge measured the depth of water in the pond and collected surface water and sediment samples. The depth of water that was measured at the greatest depth was 27 feet deep. And we collected 3 surface water and 12 sediment samples at locations shown on the image to the left. And those samples were sent to an analytical laboratory for chemical testing for the primary contaminants associated with the former W.R. Grace site, which include petroleum, naphthalene, formaldehyde, asbestos, and acids through testing of pH. Constituents were not detected in surface water, indicating no impact to the surface water. And low levels of the constituents were detected in sediment, but at levels that were below sediment screening levels, which indicate that there's no risk to either human or ecological receptors to sediment in the pond. Historically, there were former process waste areas located to the north of Jerry's Pond. Those were remediated in the late 1970s during the Red Line tunnel construction, and manufacturing operations ceased more than 40 years ago. And the testing results that we just did in April indicate that any residual contamination remaining in the sediment is negligible. The compounds that were detected are also commonly associated with urban stormwater runoff, and some associated with natural processes as well. And so while there's no risk in Jerry's Pond associated with the former W.R. Grace site, we still advise against swimming or consumption of fish from Jerry's Pond, given high bacterial loads that are common in urbanized watersheds and based on statewide public health recommendations for consumption of freshwater fish. So with this update, I'll introduce JP, who will talk about all the exciting enhancements around Jerry's Pond that we can feel confident are safe and aligned with the natural habitat goals. Thank you.
Thanks, Jen. I'm JP Shadley. I'm the landscape architect on the site, and following up on hearing Jen and Howard and Chris and Eric and all their technical safety nets. I feel really lucky that I get to talk about parks or landscape improvements. The good news that we've gotten with Jen's testing is that the bottom line is that the environmental findings are so positive that it allows us to do a lot more for the environment and for public enjoyment. So we're going to build a landscape that not only enhances the nature and the wildlife, but it balances that environmental stewardship with a lot of new landscape amenities that'll be really attractive for people. So we've continued to work with ASG, and Friends of Jerry's Pond, the overall community, and with their help, really they made a lot of great contributions. We've got some really good proposals. So I'm going to quickly walk you through.
JP,
Hey, JP, can you speak up?
Be a little louder. I know you listen, I appreciate your calming tone. I wish I spoke more like you, but a little louder.
I'll do that. Thanks.
I know it's been a long day. Thanks.
Yep. Okay, so we're going to start with the natural habitat area, and much of the site is going to be untouched, and any areas that are disturbed will be replanted with plants that enhance the ecosystem. So they'll provide a much better environment than is there now, and it'll all be consistently managed over time to maintain the environmental health of that new landscape. So It's over 2 acres. It'll extend the regional habitat value of the IQHQ site and Jerry's Pond landscapes, and particularly the avian flyways. And Anthony said he'd buy me a gift certificate if I called it a bird highway. So I'm doing it. It's a bird highway. We're going to the north and the south. So you're going to connect to the Alewife Brook Reservation to the north and Danahy Park to the south. The birds are going to really appreciate what we're doing here. So, and per the community suggestion, for this particular area, we have a guiding principle of treating open space as a site use. Providing for nature is the main goal, the primary goal of what we're doing in this large area of the site. So all the new plants will be natives, and we're going to greatly enhance the overall ecosystem from what it is today. So there's 4 basic types of landscapes that I want to walk you through. The first is that well-labeled bluish green. It's the new bioswale. So, we do need to do major earthwork for flood control, and we're working with the existing topography and the overland hydrology to minimize our impacts. The new bioswale that you see will be occasionally wet, but not always, and it's fabulous, primarily open field habitat for birds and small animals. The second landscape type is that olive green color that you see, which is a large area, and it's native wildflower meadow. It emphasizes pollinator and butterfly attracting plant species. And, so it's designed to provide food and habitat to northeastern pollinators throughout the length of the growing season. It'll have annual and perennial wildflowers like milkweed and New England aster and black-eyed Susan and coreopsis that provide pollen and nectar and shelter for hundreds of important species, and primarily including, monarch butterflies and native bees, which are really our target. So the third landscape type is the darker green one, which are the woodland preserves. And we've been working really closely with VHB and Howard and his team on the grading design to leave as many large swaths of existing trees as possible. And in the areas, we're going to get in there anyway, though, and clean out the trash and do very selective removal, like Chris was talking about, of some of the invasive plants like ailanthus and phragmites, honeysuckle and knotweed. And that way the native plants will have less competition, and overall we'll have a healthier ecosystem with more food for the native wildlife. The new woodlands are the brighter green, and those are areas that we just have to do earthwork for flood control. And in those areas, we're planning on putting an all native new plant ecosystem from the ground all the way up to the top of the tree canopy. So, we'll be using large native oaks and beeches with their extremely high wildlife value for even small mammals and stuff. Native maples, birches, cherries, all the plants will be selected in accordance with the DCR's recommended native plant palette, but we also want to make it beautiful. So, there's a pedestrian circuit that goes around the naturalized area, and it connects from the MBTA head house to Harvey Street. And we started with 2 overlooks, but at the community's request, we added a 3rd overlook, and that one's closer to the Alewife linear path and the T head house. And it's just so that people will know that they're welcome to come in. It's a threshold kind of thing that says, come on in. We've got over 60 new seats set around the natural area too. So, and one of the things that Anthony's going to tell you a little bit about is this new program of wayfinding and interpretive signage that we have at the overlooks and around the site. There's a lot of signs. So the views into the landscape are important. So if you look at the 3 overlooks, you can see the olive green areas out from them and the pink trees out from them. And what the pink trees are really a symbol that means to show you that when you sit in the overlooks, we're going to choreograph intentional views to feature planting groups. So there'll be seasonal fall color, there'll be flowering color, there'll be winter interest as we develop the design. You'll have these nice long views and medium views. And then on this slide, the last thing I want to point out on this slide is the communal garden on the lower right, which is right off the linear path and to the east of the tea house, the head house. So can we go to that community garden blow up? Thanks, Chris. So the community garden, actually, let's just go straight to the perspective because I think it really says a lot. People can tell this, but so there's the T head house in the distance. We're at the corner on the linear path. Russell Field is behind us. So we've started working with this really cool group that I had never heard of on this communal garden. It's called Green Cambridge, and we formalized a relationship with them to run the communal gardens. And you should check out their website. It really is a cool group. They do a lot of community gardens. They only work in Cambridge, and they work with elementary schools and do nature art programs. And we also like them because they've worked out all the old bugs on the way community gardening used to be. Like when I started out, someone used to get a plot and then they'd like abandon it 5 years later. And so things looked real scruffy. But now there's a farm coordinator role. So somebody manages it and all the garden beds are shared and someone is on site every day, at least for some period of time during the growing season. In terms of construction, we are working in the floodplain. So the whole thing is on a very slightly raised platform. So water can be stored underneath it. And it's all made of the same high quality decking and railings that we're using through the whole project. There's a small shed for gardening supplies, there's bicycle parking, multiple sets of stairs and a ramp. Joel, you can see we've cropped that corner and I've got the brick pavement in the foreground to open up that turn so it's a little safer on the linear path. The soils are managed with safe growing conditions with food grade liners in the planters. And Green Cambridge, they distribute the extra food produced to a food pantry. So lots and lots of good, exciting stuff going on there. Let's go to Jerry's Pond. And it's still me. So the original plan we showed you, we had some great aspirations and some good ideas, but we have learned so much by working with the community. For example, that red line that you see in the foreground used to be really close to habitat area, and we've really worked hard on developing that. But let's just go to the next slide. So this is our new plan, and I'm going to walk you around Jerry's Pond, but I want to start with the boardwalk on the east side of the site. And one thing I really want to point out here is that the community made it really clear that they wanted a direct pedestrian link from the south to the north so that you could come across Range Ave, not have to go through the parking area, not have to fight with the bicycles when it's really busy on the linear path, and you go directly up, have a nice, pleasant, wide boardwalk to walk on that heads straight up to the head house. And so we worked really hard to get that, to reduce the pedestrian and bicycle congestion on the linear path. And that the alignment of that boardwalk, it also, we tried a couple different things. We had a couple of different walks. While we've got good connectivity to the linear path so that it's very safe, we also minimized we've thought about running that path up the middle of it and, doubling up the path. But by having a singular path on the perimeter close to the pond, we've optimized how people will experience it, but we've also not impacted the habitat because there's a lot of small mammals that will live in there. And we're going to clean that area up, the invasives on the ground plane. And I'll show you a picture of that in a minute. But there's a lot of overlooks with lots of seating. We've got over 120 seats around the pond. So can you show, there's another image, Chris? The next one is a slide. Okay. I'll show you.
We go straight to the gateway here, JP. Sorry.
I'll show you a slide later of what it feels like as you're walking through the boardwalk. But let's start on this lower right corner. And so this is down by Range Ave on the southeast corner. Can we go straight to it, Chris? See the blow up? So we're improving the signalized crosswalk. Right now, the crosswalk is signalized, and we're going to add colored street print markings for additional traffic calming. And then we're going to do a gateway entrance. I mean, Lou was really adamant about this. It was a great idea. So we folded it into this. So we're going to do a really welcoming monumental gateway entry. We can go to the perspective, Chris. And so there's this monumental sign that really says this place is now open. People can come here and see it. So this is an early image of what it's going to look like. The gateway leads to a big brick overlook area There's picnic tables with seating for 20. It's partly on grade. We want to use bricks because we love the idea of bricks recalling the history of the site. But a lot of the boardwalk is right there out on the water's edge, so it's really terrific. Let's go over to the bathhouse overlook. Next image. So the boardwalk takes you straight north up to this overlook, which is built right on top of the old historic bathhouse. We have historic markers there. One will certainly be describing how there used to be a bathhouse here. That 10-foot wide boardwalk goes straight on through unimpeded, so you can move really easily. There's a direct access to the linear path and the tot lot across. We've saved a lot of trees with this layout. It looks very orthogonal, but we're going to thread the needle and save trees. And there's lots of seating here, and it's kind of cool seating. Next image. So this is one of my favorites, of course, and it gives this incredible overview of the pond and all the historic stuff that's going on here. So let's keep moving. I'm sorry this goes on, but we've got so much cool stuff that it takes a bit to talk about it. So this next outline shows you where the next improvement is. If we just go to this perspective, there's the blow up of it. It's a picnic area for 24 people. There's a couple of entrances to it, so you feel nice and safe when you're on it. Let's go to the perspective, Chris, please. And it's got another terrific overview, getting you close to the water, lots of views of the pond, be able to look across and see other folks, but it's going to have a wide, expansive view. Next, let's go to the next image. I'm trying to talk really fast, sorry. Okay, and this is one of the most exciting new things. It's the Eco Center, and let's blow it right on up. So Anthony can talk to the programming of this a little bit more, but what we've got here is, now that we know that the ground is safe and that we're actually working somewhat on underlaying pavement, under some of these green areas, what we've done is thread the needle in terms of our improvements to what's going on with the bicycle circulation along Alewife. That sort of meandering 12-foot wide path that you see, we're going to leave the 6-foot wide sidewalk that's next to Alewife Brook Parkway. You see the circles that are drawn in a very architectural way. They're very hard. Those are actually some of the most beautiful and valuable trees on the entire Jerry's Pond area, because they're northern red oaks. They're native. They're really healthy. None of them have been whacked by trees. They're prolific with their acorns, so they provide great habitat. And then inboard of those is a really strong growth of cottonwoods and other natives that have come in and pioneer species. And so what we've done is this alignment that you see parallel to Alewife Brook. It enables people to come into the park for a little bit. I shouldn't call it a park, into the Jerry's Pond open space for a little bit, and to actually have a little bit of that green experience. So also, we're going to work on the absolute southwest side, where Chris just put his cursor, to work on that. The crossing right there is pretty tough. So for the new development across the street and for the Ringe Avenue neighbors, they're going to have a better crossing. The bicycles will have a better crossing here at the Ringe and Alewife Boulevard. Sorry, I'm burned out here. On that crossing on the corner. The Eco Center, I'd like to talk about that just a bit. It's really a science education center. Can we go to the perspective, Chris? So this is what it might look like. We've got to study this a bit more, but we know we're going to have a small shed to keep things like the science equipment. Kids will be working at tables outside of it when it's open for public use. But it's going to be something pretty exciting. And Anthony, again, will talk about the program for this. You can see the bicyclists in the back they're able to go through the park a little bit. Let's keep moving. Sorry, I'm rambling. On the north and northwest part of the site, we've also widened out the entrance to the head house, so it's a little bit safer where that gauntlet moment is right now, so people will be able to see the bicyclists coming and vice versa. And then along the northwest side, next to Route 16, we're widening that sidewalk all the way from the existing gate to where you get close to the head house from 6 feet to 12 feet. And we're doing a careful job with the tree removal and replacements there. Next. Oh, this is that view I was talking about before that shows the direct path to the T head house, but it also shows how we're removing the Phragmites and stuff like that from the understory in that area along the linear path. Next. So the last slide I want to leave you with is Rinjav. This has been a challenge. I mean, we all know Rinjav is spatially challenged, and it's going to remain a very, very busy street. And so what we've come to is the possibility of moving the boardwalk out over the water so we can add a green planting strip between the existing sidewalk and the new, like a 10-foot wide boardwalk. So it's a generous boardwalk. So this idea improves the pedestrian experience, by moving the people away from the road, and it allows us to plant trees that'll provide some shade and create a green buffer between the pond edge and the road. And we really prefer this idea over doing the filling option that everybody's heard about, because unlike the filling option, it won't cause us to have to cut down more trees elsewhere on the site, because we'll have to do flood storage compensation to offset any other filling that we do here. And we just don't want to have to work on Rinjav, that work that we do on Rinjav, to take away from the other parts of the site. So we think this will provide a much better experience at the edge of Jerry's Pond than what exists today there. And that's what I've got. So thanks very much for watching. Hope you like it. And Anthony's going to take over and describe the treatments around the MBTA head house and our interpretive and wayfinding signage programs. Thanks.
Thank you very much, JP. And I think your passion and excitement is evident. It's awesome to listen to you. I want to thank you for pushing us, getting yourself in trouble at times, and really giving us ways to not only align with the community requests, but coming up with a lot of great ideas from you and your team. Just quickly, I'm not going to cover the MBTA Plaza again. Chris did that. And I'll just say on that, we heard first night, like the MBTA head house is probably the most utilized part of the whole site. And so to not try to get cooperation so we can improve that plaza, David said we got to do it. And there's a good relationship there. I'll qualify that. There's a relationship there with the T that I think David will try to capitalize on, and we will pay for that. I do want to mention, we're also committed to moving the curb line. Folks who've ridden the bus, I know we have some local residents. There's no reason for that bus to be going up on curbs. So we will figure that out so that bus stays on grade. I think JP did a great job of explaining. We're trying to separate bikes and peds where we can, because we see, a mom with 3 kids or a commuter looking down at their phone, walking on the linear path, and bikes going quickly. So we're trying to make this really a pedestrian friendly connection interior to the pond, which takes some pressure off, and widening that corner up near the football field at the lower part of the communal garden creates a safety measure as well. Eco Center, just want to say, this is intended to be a learning space. It's not a 24-hour space. We're working with Mass Autobahn to help manage this. If they say that it's not the right location, we'll revisit. The reason we think it is because, and I've coached at the Russell Field area for a long time. It's kind of lunacy down around the parking lot and along the path. And I'm not sure middle schoolers and high school students are really gonna be able to focus there. We're not talking about rush hour activity there. This would be during school hours when traffic is different, and we think our plantings and how JP is treating the trees will give this a buffer off Route 16. We can't do a lot about Route 16 or Rinjav traffic, but we are trying to provide spaces for people to utilize in different ways across the site. Did hear Anusha's question about barbecue, etc. Like that would need to be off boardwalk. We'll take a look at that. what I want to just talk about before we get into community partnerships, because we have an exciting announcement. When we started, we were talking a lot about the history of the site, right? And at first it was about industry. We know that piece. But then going back even further to the immigrant history and the history of immigrants laboring in brickyards, not a conglomerate, but independent brickyards, kilns. And as we all know, there's been an exciting wave of immigration in North Cambridge. And I love it. I'm fascinated with it. It's made North Cambridge awesome. So you have all this history, site history, including, as I have said, I know a couple that met at Mr. Burger and like literally met there. They got married. They're good friends of mine. Jen will show you all the industry that existed across the site, which is why the green areas are not like forest areas. They've been allowed to flourish because the neighborhood sought to protect them, but most of it was disturbed. We want to create wayfinding, meaning why you're on a particular path or why you're in a particular location with history, with ecological celebration. So we want to combine these wayfindings with ode to the brick industry or ode to a certain immigration wave, along with a bike path or a plaza or a picnic area. And Matt from our team, who I didn't think was listening, has drunk the Kool-Aid. He's researched the indigenous peoples that have been on this land. I'm like really humbled by his passion for this because I'm all about it. And it's going to be awesome. And David Surratt has bought completely in. So this is going to be a serious wayfinding historical placards throughout the site. And I asked today if we could have on our website, start to put this up. And if residents have pictures or historical perspective, to share it. And, so this, I just want to have a lot of fun with this and we can do that. So that's happening. Go ahead, Chris. Oh, I don't know who, I remember Barbo's. I think Barbo's was the predecessor of Big Burger, but, and I know there was a drive-in up there, but and this is Jerry's Pond. You can see how the Route 16 side was all disturbed. Which is another reason why the Eco Center, JP has looked for areas that were disturbed in the past, were developed. So we don't have to go in and disturb terrain and habitat that it has been more protected. And the community asked Lou, and Lou had asked, Lou Weitzman, who's been great with Friends of Jerry's Pond, asked for an area where folks could not be on boardwalks. And so Jen, who really advises us on habitat and usage, suggested that the area where Mr. Berger would be good because it's all been disturbed previously. And so that corner becomes an interesting option for folks to be able to get off boardwalks. But these are just an example of some of the awesome stuff. And Route 16 looks exactly the same except for Mr. Berger. Next slide. This is just all good news. We have, because of the community's work, we've been introduced to a lot of organizations that have become resources for us. We've talked about Green Cambridge and Mass Audubon, and we've worked with Ocean Institute, and David's been out there. He was out there with the Little League Saturday and youth soccer, and obviously we're deeply vested with the Ringe Ave community. We have an internship program right now with 6 local residents, but and this just, we've had some fun out there. Like for me, if you don't get to know the community, you're missing out on where all the passion comes from. These are just some pictures from the last couple months. The big news is $1 million commitment that we are making tonight by the Just to Start Biomedical Career Program, which I've been a supporter of for many years and going back to being in the legislature, they've been using a lab over at Bunker Hill. So it's a Cambridge program, but there's no lab in Cambridge despite all our labs. So they've committed to a biomedical career lab across the street. And Carl came to us, and David and Tracy and the team were just like, how do we not partner in this? Because this trains adults that are underemployed to get into biomedical careers. So David's been on the phone with them. He's offered to be an advisor into the development of the lab structure. So we're committing $500,000. Those will be delivered on the early side of our development, aligned with early building permits, as well as we're initiating Mohammed and Anusha early on. We're like, kids can't afford to go to college in the neighborhood. So IQHQ is going to start with $250,000 of seed money and then replenish the fund for $25,000 a year for 10 years. So that's $1 million commitment. This doesn't, and we want to involve local residents in both the workforce initiatives with Justice Staff to get all of you more involved in mentoring and participating. We also want to solicit you folks to be part of the scholarship fund committee to help engage, solicit applications and select those. This doesn't include a lot of the funding and support we're giving to local organizations that we're just not looking for credit for. It's just part of being a good neighbor. David, I want to introduce David Surratt, who's been phenomenal to work with at this time.
Hey, thanks, Anthony. And thanks, everybody, for your support. It was great turnout tonight. You know, it has been a lot of fun. As Anthony says, it's been great working in the neighborhood and being there to participate in Earth Day. Going to the Little League on Saturday, seeing all the folks turning out. I also went over to the soccer fields, and there's quite a lot of participation going on there. I want to thank the interns and the Ringe Ave residents. They've been very great, you know, for us to help with Earth Day and help in general. And our interns have been, you know, very good. You know, all the community outreaches, you know, programs have been great. You have made this a better project. Every time I watch these slides, you know, I think it's going to be terrific. Jerry Pond and the walkways, and you know, we really are going to be a great neighbor. You know, we love the location. We really want to help out with the head house. Happy to sponsor and the scholarships and Just the Start program. And we just really are excited about the site and want to be a good neighbor and good citizen of Cambridge. I know I always say that. The other thing I always say is all the community groups have really been extremely helpful in making this a better project. All your input's been fantastic, and you know, we couldn't do it without you guys. And you know, Anthony, you know, his heart is in this. Everyone always forgets him, but Anthony, thanks a lot for all your hard work. It's been terrific. So thank you, everybody.
So we're going to go to Q&A. I asked what could go wrong at the beginning of the presentation. I got to put a new battery in my mouse, so I can't respond to chat. Chris and team, you folks have been watching the chat. Chris, why don't you go back to the agenda? Although I don't know that we need to see that slide the whole time, but we could. Can you put the agenda slide back up? And then I'm gonna start, and then I'm gonna replace a battery. There was a good question about you know, why can't all the parking go into the garage? And it was from Natalia, and it's a reasonable question. The zoning limits us to 55 feet, which is why, you know, we can say confidently the site's not being overdeveloped. And then on top of the garage, we're doing biosolar and green. We also have floodplain limitations. So we're trying to stay as much out of the floodplain as possible, and the garage, and we're lifting the garage up so that that can have minimal effect. But the garage, above grade parking does count towards commercial development. and as you can see, we've invested a ton of extra money in this project. So getting the amount of lab that we're getting pays for all this stuff. And so we've tried to make the garage adequate. But the other piece of this is that you don't want to overbuild the garage because then it never goes away. And we do think that car use is going to go down over the next, 10, 20, 30 years. The lots we can continue to look at, if our parking demand is down, we can look at those lots for residential development. So, but the garage will never go away once it's built. So we're trying to just strike a balance there. And like I say, in 5 years, you look at your parking, and if your parking is 10, 15% below, you can look at each lot independently. We get that it's not ideal, but it's a critical part of the ability to lease out these buildings, get the amount of development we need, and have adequate parking. Sean, I know there's been a couple of other questions. Howard, you may want to jump in, but why don't you guys jump in on I think there may have been a question on sustainability as well.
So I'll just jump in a little bit. There was a couple questions on the surface lots north of Whittemore, Anthony, and I just want to say that we didn't spend a lot of time on it, but the IQHQ is going to be planting trees on the parking lots north of Whittemore, which will do a couple things, help with the heat island impact, also help a little bit with stormwater. But we're going to continue to look at the stormwater and the stormwater management, which contributes to surface flooding, as well as other permeable kind of treatments there. So that's in progress and evolving. So continuing to look at that.
Yep, Howard, that was one of the questions. And just a note, I think I did in chat, in the past, there's been restraints on trying to make those improvements, but we will work around the use limitations and see where we can just improve drainage there. Howard, is it fair to say that our development won't increase flooding on the lots, but the existing water collection that happens just because of asphalt could be improved if we look at some drainage opportunity?
That's absolutely accurate, Anthony.
Okay.
Well said.
I can touch on the comment about there was a comment that came through about the habitat supporting the bird population as JP was discussing, and there was a question about bird safe glass. That's definitely something we are looking at. There are coatings that are visible to birds that then keep them from flying into glass. So that's something we're looking at. But also, I think important to note, these are 3-story buildings, approximately 48 to 49 feet high. So they're not, it's hard to necessarily tell in plan view, but they are 3-story buildings. So not necessarily the highest buildings in the area, but that is something we're looking at for glass. So good question. Thank you.
And Chris Nahid, who's been great representing the Whittemore Ave neighborhood around traffic and parking.
Yep.
And Natalia talked about speeding, and let's take a deep dive, Sean, at exits and anything we can do, to make sure folks are respecting the neighborhood. We have set up the garage, so a lot of the traffic gets right out there. But Nahid's question was, if we lose parking because we plant trees in Whittemore lots or we increase flood capacity, can we relocate those to the garage? Nahid, we're gonna hold on to what we think we need. I will say that typically the city would just keep pushing you down because environmentally that's the right place to be. But we are next to a bedroom community, and it's not like it's easy to park at Harvey Street. I've been down that road. And the reality is our lots are pretty far from Russell Field. So when you offer help with that, Little League coaches and those folks, they're not going to park way down there and walk over. They just don't. So we'll make sure that we end up in a good place. And we totally understand the importance of that. Rachel, David's looking for a vacation. I'm not sure he's buying anything in the near future, but it's a good question. I will say to that, Rachel asked me, somebody texted me and said, can IQHQ buy the area up in the quad because they're so responsible? Rachel asked about the Fresh Pond Mall. There is other opportunities here, like connecting the Ringe Ave community over to Danahy, and we're trying to improve connections to the head house, so folks at 402 maybe don't want to cross at 16, because we know that's a tough crossing. We're trying to do everything possible to support all we can on our side, but there is work to do around the neighborhood, both at Smith Place and at the pond. I lived in West Cambridge my whole life, and in North Cambridge all the time, so get it.
Yeah, and Mike, I see your comment about the glass. Agree. I mean, and as the building codes continue to push for a window wall ratio for your vision glass that gets closer to 30%. Our percentage is close to that. It's about 31% for vision, which is one of the things that increases, as you note, the performance of the building. And so, we are significant portions of the building do have more of a punch window aesthetic. We have increased our thermal insulation in opaque areas, to increase the performance of the overall envelope. But yeah, very good point. And we are looking to keep that window wall ratio low at about 31% is what our energy models running on right now.
Yeah, and we kind of lost our thunder on green roofs because we committed early, and then the city ordinance changed. I still think we're going to be way ahead of the curve in terms of the amount of biosolar and green. And the garage is sort of an extra because you could do a tray of parking on top and get out of the green roof commitment. There just aren't a lot of above grade garages these days. The zoning wants us above grade to not disturb flooding and habitat. But that I really want to thank Eric and David and his team for being way out on that early. And just on the communal garden, the intention is for that to serve folks in need in North Cambridge first. So everyone participates in the garden. You can't monopolize plots, which has happened in other community gardens. We can all participate. David's committed. The Green Cambridge has a budget of about $40,000 a year, and David has committed to 10 years of funding for that and building it. I didn't make a big deal out of that commitment, but we're building it, and we're going to give Green Cambridge the $40,000 a year to maintain it, and then hopefully the vegetables will be distributed in North Cambridge. But we can all participate in growth. Yes, thank you, Diane. You were relentless on green roofs, and everybody, I give you a hard time because you are literally the most relentless group of people I've ever dealt with, but I am too, and relentless activism gets stuff done. So in the end, we'll all be appreciative. I want to let Joel, who's just when we thought we could rest, is probably going to announce another meeting. So can you allow Joel to announce the meeting, and we'll let everybody go?
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Hi, I'm Joel Najic. I'm with the LY Study Group, live on Clifton Street. I just want to thank IQHQ, the whole project team, Anthony and everybody for listening so much and being so generous and engaging the community for so long. And it's definitely, we appreciate it. And, I think it's going to make the project better for everybody. So anyway, the LY Study Group, yes, we're relentless. We're going to have a community meeting next Wednesday from 6:30 to 8 p.m. just as another opportunity for members of the community to hear about these proposals, these revisions, if you haven't heard, and for everybody to discuss them and just see if we have any additional feedback. The LY Study Group and other neighborhood groups will be meeting again with IQHQ on the following Friday, June 4th. So we'll have an opportunity to share the additional feedback that we got from the community meeting on June 2nd. So again, it's June 2nd from 6:30 to 8 on Zoom, and the link to register is in the chat, or you can go to alewife.org and click on meetings to register. So we hope to see a lot of you there next week. And thank you, Anthony, and everybody else.
Yeah, and just to say, we're not going anywhere. We know this will be a better process if we keep responding. We started a website just for this. If we're able to be approved, and project moves forward, which we think if we're approved in the near future, everything is lined up to move. We'll have a whole construction interaction as well. So, but we're not going anywhere. And we try to, I think we responded to every email, and Ashley and Chrissy, we have a great team. Matt, everyone's been awesome. So you don't feel like this is the last meeting, but I think it was an important one to show how seriously we took all the requests. So thanks, John. Everyone, Eric, thank you. Have a great night. And enjoy the world going back to somewhat normal. We'll never be normal, especially here. I don't want to be normal, but we're getting back to something.
People keep asking how many employees there are going to be.
Okay, good.
Oh, yeah, we tracked a few of these questions and we've answered that in the past. We do have an estimated employee count, and we'll get that to you.
Say, Anthony?
Yes.
Anthony?
Yeah, we're gonna say goodnight to everybody and appreciate
Hey, Anthony?
everyone being on. Thanks.